I'd like to call the meeting to order. The Board of Leavenworth County Commissioners, I'd like to invite everyone to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to ask we start with a moment of silence, please. Roll call. I'll start with Commissioner Culbertson.
Here.
Commissioner Smith is present. Commissioner Chimke. Here. And Commissioner Stiebens and Commissioner KAAZ.
Here.
All commissioners are present. We have any public comment today, or is it just going to be in the public hearing portion? Everybody here for public comment other than County Road 1? And would you folks just want to do that when we open up the public hearing for that? Okay, everybody agrees to that? Okay. Then we'll move on to administrative business. Mr. LOUGHRY, we have any administrative business?
I have a couple of things, actually. I'll start first. We do have a cereal malt beverage license that's need to be approved. It's the only one that the county issues through the year. I think the clerk provided you with that information. It is for at 15621 158th Street, Bonner Springs, Kansas, in Fairmount Township, and it's the little Lake Stop
gas station, convenience store. Okay. I'll entertain a motion that authorizes the chairman to sign the cereal malt license for Lake Stop at 158th and K32.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Just briefly, yesterday was the deadline for the CARES Act relief fund submissions. We had quite a few come in yesterday, obviously, through today, and probably tomorrow yet we'll be going through them, making sure we have all the proper documentation to get that sent off to the state, and then making any reallocations to the county. But a little too early yet to know exactly where we're at until we get through all those documents.
Mark, real quick, there are a few email exchanges with at least one of the township treasurers, and then obviously, Fire District 1, and did all that get, with the new fire chief, did all that get squared away?
So I'm not sure what may have went directly to the staff that's handling it here, but I know that at least one of the townships did submit a request to reallocate their funds to the fire district, and I know another one met to do that, but I haven't seen the document.
She dropped it off at the clerk's office.
Yes, that's what I say. They probably have it. It just didn't come through the email.
So it did make it in, though, was the... Okay.
Yep.
Good.
We had a discussion on it last week if you watched our meeting. I believe you were gone last week.
I was.
Yeah, discussed last week. Sure that everybody got their stuff by the 15th.
Good. I mean, I would have rather been...
What?
Surveyor.
Yeah. We have one other item.
Okay. On the okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, this is David Van Paris. I'd like the Board to favorably consider a motion that was shortly made by Commissioner Stieben, and he's making that motion because he was closest to me to hand the document to. This is with respect to KSA 1914-01A. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It deals with the appointment of alternate surveyors to sign off on subdivision plats. The motion would authorize Mr. Bill Knoll to appoint and designate additional surveyors for that purpose as needed. I would point out Mr. Knoll is a licensed surveyor and can perform in the immediate future some of those duties himself. However, I have advised him it's best that outside surveying services be obtained as quickly as possible. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on this matter.
So I don't know if the question's more for you, Mr. Van Paris, or for Mr. Knoll. What we have staff. What's the?
Our county surveyor is currently requesting leave, and this is to address that matter.
I got you. Okay.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move that this board authorize Mr. Bill Knoll, the Director of ICS, to designate a surveyor or surveyors for the purpose of reviewing subdivision plats and executing such other acts relating to the duties of the county surveyor as provided by KSA 58-2005.
I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? I just would, I'm okay with hiring it out. I'd hate to put that all on Mr. Knoll. I think he's got plenty to do. So, if there's no further discussion, voting?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion was unanimous, or voting was unanimous.
So, Bill, just real quick, the intention, though, is this is primarily so that you have additional resources when internally we don't have the staff for whatever the reason.
This is to address an immediate review of some of the surveys that we have within our office. We do have a required time frame to review those and provide responses per state statute, I believe, to the applicants or to the people submitting those surveys. And so we are going to get the inventory that we have currently within our office out, and then depending on how the situation transpires, we will either outsource those services for just the immediate future, not for a long-term solution, or we will address it internally with the staff, depending on the situation.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other administrative business?
None at this time.
Well, I'll just, where are we at on our FEMA money from the Linwood tornado? It's been 18 months now, and
I think we're exactly where we were 18 months ago. We have submitted the paperwork.
Commissioner Smith, there's a saying in an island in the Caribbean, soon come on.
Well, July 26th, it was on the Channel 4 News, the FEMA director said they are fully funded and have plenty of money for disasters. So we've been through 2 federal government budget cycles. I mean, October 1's federal government, so we've been through 2. And if they had plenty of money, you would think they would get some of us to Douglas County and Leavenworth County for that tornado.
So are you saying they're incompetent in the
I didn't
administration
say
of the
that.
money?
You're putting words in my mouth.
I'll say
No.
it.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, what do we need to do to either get a yay or nay, whether they're going to pay us or not?
Commissioner, about the only recommendation I can have, and I'll defer to Mr. LOUGHRY as to the wisdom of this, would be to contact your congressional delegation and ask for their assistance.
Okay. That'll work. Everybody get that?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
All right.
Mr. Latourneau would join us on one of our meetings.
Yeah. I mean, is there usually a time frame when FEMA pays for a disaster? I mean, is there a statute of limitations if they don't pay by a certain time? No.
Commissioner, the county has submitted the proper paperwork. It's been acknowledged by FEMA. The issue is how it is moving through the federal bureaucracy. And again, I suggest possibly your only course of action might be to contact your congressional delegation and ask them to look into it.
Okay. All right.
On a similar note, our newly elected legislators from the southern part of the county have indicated to me that they will be introducing the tax abatement bill that should have passed last session. So hopefully that will have a little more luck than this in moving ahead.
Okay. You mean on the tax abatement, you mean...
For the outbuildings.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes. The common sense tax abatement bill.
That never made it.
Common sense where you don't pay taxes on your barns that aren't there
Exactly.
after they're destroyed. Okay, yeah. All right, so we're going again, huh?
Going to try it again.
All right, that's good. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the consent agendas. On the consent agenda, is there anything that needs to be pulled off and voted on separately?
Check registry, please.
All right.
I'll make a motion, we accept the consent agenda minus the check registry as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the consent agenda less the check registry? Voting?
Aye.
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 Okay.
I'll make a motion, we accept the consent agenda check registry section.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the check registry. Any further discussion on that item? Voting?
Aye.
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 Abstain.
All right. And we'll move on to Public Works. Mr. Knoll?
MSC. All right. We have a couple items here today for your consideration. My paperwork out here. The first is for the bridge replacement on SH 30. We did solicit for proposals for the construction engineering inspection of this project that is scheduled to occur during next calendar year. We received 3 proposals. They were all on KDOT's pre-qualified list of inspection services, and so therefore they were all considered to offer equivalent services. So we provided we are providing a cost analysis regarding who provides those services at the lowest rate. And we are making the recommendation that Finney and Turnip Seed be approved for this contract based upon these billing rates and applicable services. The cost before you today is $51,320 for those services. What we did was we took the hourly rates, made comparisons of between the different estimated numbers of hours that the construction would take. The project is limited to 90 days once it begins because of the location and the type of construction. If we take the highest construction hour estimate, that does come out to $51,320. Finney and Turnip Seed had 613 hours of billing applied to the project. If it were to be done at their construction estimated time, which is outside of their control, since they are not the contractor that's going to do the construction, it would be approximately $39,900. And so we are asking that you go ahead and approve the contract based upon the highest estimate with the knowledge that there could be a cost savings there if the contractor constructing the bridge gets it done sooner than that at the estimate provided by Finney and Turnip Seed.
Okay. Anyone have any questions of Mr. Knoll? Would this bridge been in the tornado path that we could turn it in for FEMA?
No, but it is getting some very small grant from Wildlife.
Sherman Township, so.
Yeah. No, and I can say from my experience with FEMA, from the flood disaster declaration of 2014, other counties that I was working in did not receive funding until all of it until 2019. So it was 4 years and 10 months prior to all of the funding being received.
This is 158th and Archer.
Yep, this is south of K32. We did have a grant
Mayhem.
for $50,000
Archer.
towards the cost of this, which is maybe 6% or something of the bridge in total cost, 5%. But from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
Oh, we're going to have some safe fish passage on that? All right.
I think so. It's an existing box culvert with a bridge with a concrete floor. And so I think that with the natural bottom, they are offered $50,000 towards its construction.
Okay.
And the completion, when do you anticipate the completion?
Based upon the contract that's out for bid currently, the late completion would be near the end of September. We provided a fairly wide notice to proceed window, or allowed the contractor to choose when to start the project, but once they start, they only have 90 days to complete it. And so we tried to squeeze it into a small construction window, but provided them several months that they could choose when to start the project in order to get good pricing for it. And so the latest it could be completed by the contract is by October 1st, approximately.
E58 setting the bar now, Jeff. Any other questions, Mr. Knoll? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve inspection services and award it to Finney and Turnipseed.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the inspection services? Voting?
Aye.
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 Okay. Second item we have for your consideration today is to consider the acceptance of the proposal by Bartlett and West to investigate the premature asphalt pavement failure of dust abatement project groups 2, 4, 5, and 7. Prior to the acceptance of the dust abatement groups completed by McInerney Construction, premature asphalt cracking was identified throughout various locations in each group. Investigation into the cause of the damage is required to identify the responsible party for the required repairs. Bartlett and West has provided a proposal to perform the required investigation and pavement analysis study. Examination of both the existing conditions of the roadbed and the materials used during construction will be completed. Bartlett and West will conduct a review of the construction records, acquire non-destructive density measurements at various locations, and perform full depth core testing to identify the underlying causes of the cracking that occurred. At the conclusion of the study, Leavenworth County will receive a report summarizing the findings of the analysis of the cores and the asphalt testing and the analysis of the construction methods. Any recommendations for solutions based upon the findings will be provided at that time.
Okay.
This is I know part of this discussion is we wanted to get an independent analysis completed. From my knowledge in the recent history of Leavenworth County, Bartlett and West has not completed any contracts for design or inspection or studies over the course of the last several years, and has no interaction or communications prior to this with Leavenworth County. So this is a independent analysis. The firm that we're working with is out of Topeka. Provide this proposal. The cores will be taken by Terracon, so they'll be providing the sampling to the firm.
Bill, it sounds like that's about as truly disinterested a third party as you could find.
That was our intent.
Was there a start and stop? Did I miss it? Like how quickly they planned to
No, that
the
was
analysis and when they...
They're going to schedule the analysis as soon as they have a contract. They will come out over the course of the next several weeks, weather dependent, and do some of their initial non-destructive testing with nuclear gauges and some visual inspections. But they won't be able to provide us a schedule until they have received a schedule from Terracon, because their testing is based upon Terracon's. I know Terracon always has a several-week backlog, and so we will need to await Terracon's schedule in order to provide both the board and the consultant and McInerney a schedule. I know that has been requested. We would update them if this agreement is approved. We will notify them of that, and then when there is a schedule provided to us from Bartlett and West, we will notify everyone of that. That would be the intended communication.
Their schedule is dependent upon Terracon, so we don't know if this is a 6-week or a 6-month effort.
It's not 6 months, but it could be 6 weeks. Yeah, I mean, very, very much so, because they had proposed other testing companies who we felt could have been conflicted in the matter, and so I made a request that they use a independent testing company that had not done any contracting with the projects that we currently have ongoing or had been previously referenced. And so Terracon was the same price, but they did have a longer backlog. So yes, it could be 3 to 4 weeks before, or even 6, and then a couple weeks. I mean, this could be a 4 to 8 week process.
Well, I was just curious, since a firm's been identified, I didn't know if we had any other groups, whether it was other projects or dust abatement or otherwise, where we've had any kind of failures. If we already have a group that's under contract, do we need any other inspection services anywhere else, or is this the full extent as far as 2020 goes?
We are treating each contracted group independently and doing an analysis of each one independently from a staff level. If a determination is made that we do indeed need to look into another area or group, we can do that independently. Right now we're focusing in on groups 2, 4, 5, and 7 because of the retainage issue and the direction that we've been provided by the board.
Okay.
Any other questions, Mr. Knoll, on this? Premature asphalt cracking. Okay.
Kind of like concrete.
Yeah, I know, but premature, I thought it was immediate.
It was.
Okay. All right, now I entertain a motion to approve Bartlett and West investigate the premature asphalt failure of the dust abatement projects 2, 4, 5, and 7.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Any further discussion? We have to do this to get it. We're going to be pointing fingers if we don't. So.
Nope, agreed.
Then voting.
Aye.
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 All right. That's all the items I had.
I wanted you to kind of report on what is happening there at 158th Street and K32, what the latest is on that.
Yes, so we were returned a traffic investigation report from KDOT for that intersection this past week. The immediate findings of that were that a traffic light was not warranted based upon the traffic volumes and the crash history there. Obviously, a lot of you are aware that there has been some recent fatalities at that intersection, and that there has been a lot of public concern regarding some of the safety aspects of that intersection. The immediate recommendations brought forth by KDOT is they are installing stop bars, which I believe have been installed already. This last week, they installed stop bars to the approaches of 158th Street on both northbound and southbound traffic. In appropriate locations to try to get the traffic to stop at the ideal sight distance triangle location. They've placed look again signs, or they have ordered look again signs to be placed on 158th Street for northbound and southbound traffic. They are reducing the advisory speed limit from 45 to 40 miles an hour, and they are placing flashing beacons on those reduced speed limit advisory signs in order to try to make the public more aware of the possibility for cross traffic. And then they are replacing some of the fluorescent yellow signs that are located near the cemetery entrance and relocating them in a different location to also help improve the sight triangles. They did identify some long-term planning solutions that include a single-lane roundabout and flattening the crest of the hill to the east of the intersection in order to improve the line of sight at the location. And that was pretty much the conclusion of that report. If you have any other questions, I can try to answer.
I did speak to Justin from the KDOT, and he indicated that this grading of that they had recommended would, in his opinion, take place within the next 2 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the report does not have any indications of.
So I'm hoping that's going to be the case. So anyway, just letting folks know what's happening down there, and we are working on that location, and we do realize that it's been an issue.
And the other
long-term recommendation roundabout?
I don't like that one, but that's Not me.
Thank you.
And then,
I hate roundabouts.
You got to take proposals. You get better otherwise. And you got to use the opportunity to bring up a roundabout. I haven't had a chance.
in a roundabout way, you do.
Yeah, in a roundabout way.
So,
Hey, if they'll build a roundabout,
yeah.
we're not going to argue with them.
Well, we can. It's their intersection,
That's right.
and it's their money.
And it would improve safety.
And they also did awarded the funds for County Road 2, 158 north of there to the turnpike, shoulders
Right.
and all that. So there's going to be a lot going on down there.
Right. And we got the highest.
And we've waited a long time to get it. So it's been a long time coming. So, and then yesterday, Mark Baser's project.
Basis project moved forward to the next stage. Yesterday was the TTPC meeting, which was another sub-allocated committee meeting for different funding sources through Mark, but their projects, both the trail and the 155th Street improvements, were successfully passed through that by the vote of the committee. So I think the last step in the process for them to receive their funding would be the actual Mark Council, which I believe Commissioner Smith is the representative on, to take a vote on the matter.
And did you make the motion for that?
I made the motion in the STP committee. That's
Right.
where I made two motions, and ended up a third motion was made that was approved. But yes, we made several motions and made a lot of arguments on behalf of the city of Basel and Leavenworth County, based upon historical data and basically where funding from the Mark region had gone, and it hadn't gone to Leavenworth County in the past, and the scoring of the project was the highest in the Kansas side of the Mark region. So,
And how much funding is that potentially?
$7 million?
7.45 million.
Yeah.
7.45 million.
Yeah.
The project's approximately $9 million.
And then you look at the funding that we got from the KDOT, that's 900,000. So we're talking about some real improvements are going to be made down in that area. It's really a good thing.
Yes.
City of Basel council members, city administrator, mayor, they all work very hard on this too. So it's been a long time coming also.
Yes.
Anyways,
Thanks for your hard
all
work.
right, thanks for
Well
everything you do.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Is there a table anywhere that shows how those funds have been allocated over the last decade or two?
Well, yeah, we get a yearly report, and
That just shows prior years. That should show. Does it go back historically?
I go back 4 years probably.
I was just curious.
Yeah, I just thought.
Is that, you know if that's online? Do they have all that online?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be public record. I was just
Yeah,
curious if it was.
yeah, it is.
There's a.
All right, we're ready for planning and zoning. Crystal, how are you today?
Well, Mr. Chairman, how are you?
Oh, forgive me, I forgot to recognize Commissioner-elect Mike Smith. You snuck in the back.
Absolutely.
How are you today, Mike? Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Alrighty. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Morning.
I have before you Resolution 2020-39. This is for the adoption of the 2006 International Building Codes and International Residential Code. I won't belabor the point. We have had this before the board several times. Obviously, staff's recommendation is for approval of this. So staff recommends approval, and I will answer any questions that you may have.
Would this take effect immediately, or could we do it for January 1, or how would we want to move forward if this were to pass?
I believe we could, and Mr. Van Parys would maybe want to clarify, but if you wanted it to be, to go into effect on January 1, I think we could make a small amendment to the resolution and say that it goes into effect then, or...
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, that amendment could certainly be inserted into the resolution.
Okay.
Without that amendment, when does it go into effect? When it's published in the paper?
We you sign it.
Immediately, okay.
No, I didn't know if anybody had concerns of people who just, well, like on these wedding venues or any kind of a building that they didn't plan on having sprinklers or whatever the code would call for or anything like that. If that was going to be a financial hardship on somebody.
We'll say we have, when people have called in the last couple of months, we've certainly made them aware that, that this was something that was being considered by the board. Furthermore, hate to jinx it, but this is a pretty slow time right now for building permits. It's obviously gone cold. It's tough to build. So those have really started to trickle in. But again, we have made sure in the last couple of months that people know that this was potentially going to happen. So.
But if they were to purchase their building permit before this went into effect, it would be under the old.
And we had several people do that, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So I think if we made that slight adjustment, then we give people a little time.
2 weeks.
It's a very little time.
All you got to do is buy a building permit. You still got a year to build.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Building permit's good for a year. Okay.
But the purpose of this is public safety, so.
So, Crystal, we've had obviously some very in-depth discussions about this and what it potentially means for someone who wants to do a remodel, which it clearly states if it's greater than 51% of the current structure, then, or if it was less than 51% of the current structure, then it would be exempt from this rule. The goal here was commercially making sure that we're recognizing these number of businesses that are exist in the county and safety being a concern. The Linwood tornado and that major gap, and so how this would benefit current homeowners that have damage by fire, by flood, by force majeure, whatever it is, making sure that they get full values associated with that damage. The one kind of sticking point I've still had, because I don't think from a new home construction this has nearly the impact that some would believe as far as negatively number of building permits issued. But on this commercial front, sprinklers, for example, we've talked about, and they are beyond costly. Matter of fact, they sometimes decide whether a project's even viable or not. I'm a firm believer that while necessary, especially in high density areas, it's largely to prevent additional structure fires from occurring, right? It's more it's that mitigation effort, because again, a building catches on fire, so does the next 6, so does the next 12. The concern I have is, one, the cost if somebody's going to have any type of, whether it's an ag business or anything else, and I realize ag is maybe slightly outside of scope here, but if you have a venue of any sort or anything that's going to have a retail component with traffic, if it meets that minimum square footage of, do you remember what the threshold is?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Typically, it's 10,000 square feet.
Is that stops a lot of those projects, and I just think it's an unrealistic ask or expectation for an area that doesn't have the infrastructure anyway.
I understand that. These are life safety issues, not property protection issues. Sprinklers inside of structures are really not designed to stop the fire. They're designed to allow people to exit the structure if it does catch on fire. The sprinkling of these event venues out in the county are probably more important than in the city because of the response time. If you're in the city and there's a fire, the response time is why there's a better fire code rating for instance, Lansing, because their response time is shortened. But if you are out in the county, instead of a 5-minute response time, you now have a 15 to 25-minute response time. That's really what the sprinklers are for, is to help protect the people who are in those venues and allow them the opportunity to get out. Not saying that you can't amend code, but that goes back to the whole intent of adopting the code is not just so structures are being built safe, but for also life safety, because we are experiencing more commercial development out in the county, and that's likely where there's going to be a dense gathering And if they're not building those structures to code, it makes it even more difficult for the people to get out of those facilities if something does happen. So that's why it was included in this proposal.
A question for you is event venues that we have seen come through in the last number of years. What is the typical square footage of those? You know, I mean,
Sorry, if
just
I
a
would,
ballpark.
I would hate to even say that. I'm sorry if I would have been asked that question sooner. I could have got that information for you. But I mean, they're large, but I would really be hesitant to even give an estimate on that. I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Okay.
I mean, so 100 by 100 is 10,000. So. No, Mark, I mean, I don't disagree with that. At the same time, we've talked about safety from a structural, from an MEP, from making sure that the insurance aspect, when you're adding six figures to those types of projects, those projects don't happen. I would argue that you've already got dozens in the city limits and probably dozens outside of the city limits that don't occupy or don't currently maintain sprinkler systems. So, and the cost is obviously even more reasonable inside the city limits because you have the infrastructure to tie into. So it's just one that I'm having a real problem, whether it's any type of venue or facility or warehouse or whatever it may be. If you're outside of that infrastructure, it's just a really tough financial ask. And in a commercial setting that isn't a venue like an event space, then that argument that was just made relative to the safety, it doesn't even apply as far as the count of people. So, because we don't get to pick venue use or type, we're basically going to say it's a commercial space, it exceeds 10,000 square feet, this is the requirement. And if you were going to say it applies to event spaces or venues that have a minimum occupancy of X even, you could make your life safety argument that much stronger. But that's just one type, and there's dozens of potential uses that don't apply. So,
I believe we approved one on a special use permit, and then with the whole COVID thing was put on hold, and it's on a well. It doesn't even have rural water in the area.
I know Chief Smith from Tonganoxie was at our meeting. He said that they now have systems where, and I'm sure it is more expensive, but systems where you can have a tank. And
no, I'm not saying it can't be done.
Yeah.
I'm just saying
it's just
you throw enough money at anything. It's all.
But and of course this is the commercial part, and this is a discussion that is important. But I think the reason this came before us is because we had folks that were trying to recover from their insurance, and then when the tornado came, and then they were unable to, they had insurance companies and balking at wanting to pay replacement cost when there are no codes at all in Leavenworth County. And I think we're trying to establish a minimum code for the county so that doesn't happen to people no matter where they live in the county. They're protected at least at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And
right. And
if you wanted to exempt the square footage on sprinklers, make it 15,000 square feet or some change like that. But personally, I think that we should move ahead. This is like new construction. At some point, you're going to want to not allow these things that are safety deficient to continue.
I agree.
Anyone else have anything to ask of Crystal on this? And I'll entertain a motion, Commissioner Stevens.
Let's see. I move to approve Resolution 2020-39, adopting 2006 International Building Code and 2006 International Residential Code for 2-family dwellings with certain modifications with the start date of January 1st.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the building codes?
Yeah, I do have a couple things.
Okay.
Speaking for the only district whose numbers are going down from the last several census counts, In an effort to promote economic development in my district, I would ask that the motion be amended to exclude Easton and Kickapoo Township from the resolution. I've talked to both of my fire chiefs for Easton and Kickapoo Township. They don't have a problem with us not being part of this building code. I talked to legal counsel. They said there's nothing prohibiting us from doing that. If you think about it, it's pretty much the same as our zoning map. It would be just like zoning the Easton and Kickapoo Townships differently than the rest of the county. So I would ask that you exclude Easton and Kickapoo Township from the motion.
So would you be willing to withdraw your motion and withdraw your second?
I guess my question would be, why is it that the folks that live in those two townships, if there was a tornado that came through, that we wouldn't want to protect them to the same level we'd protect the rest of the citizens in the county?
They don't see it. I haven't had one constituent in my district ask for building codes. In fact, I've had hundreds tell me they don't want this. If I had even one ask for this, then maybe my position would be different. But I'm here to represent the constituents in my district, and they do not want to be part of this building code resolution.
Well, my personal opinion is it's equal protection of the law, then we should equally protect everyone that lives in the county. So I don't think we should exclude a couple townships. That's just my opinion. Everybody else could weigh in.
It's your motion.
No, I don't have a problem with supporting Commissioner Culbertson's ask. I'm still at the point that while I think we're going in the right direction, I'm just still not there. I think this is. I think we need standards. I think we need improvements, but I think we're still potentially asking too much based on where we're planning on implementing this. So.
Okay. I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
I would assume that if Commissioner Culbertson sincerely feels that is the desire of his constituents not to have the codes for that there is no reason that were there to become additional information or someone came forward that said, yes, I do want this, then we could bring them, I'm asking, bring them into the codes? Because I'm just saying, if it turned out that,
Yeah, it's something we could always change later. We could adopt it without the two townships for now, and then if it turns out to be a problem, adopt them later.
Well, I'm sure if you had letters of support from the Easton and Kickapoo Township areas, you'd happily.
Absolutely.
So you're saying your fire chiefs do not want building codes?
Nope. Matter of fact, when I asked them if they had a problem with it, they both are against building codes.
That's interesting to me.
So are you withdrawing your second?
Is there an
And like I said, I don't see it really as much different than our zoning map. We've zoned different areas of the county differently than other zones. This is basically doing the same thing.
But this is a public safety issue. We want to protect all the citizens in the county.
Okay.
I think there's a public safety component. I think this started from trying to help people that had loss of property. And so while I'm adamantly in support for helping those solve for that, I think we're also potentially deterring some development if we don't get smart, at least on the commercial side. I'm less concerned on the residential. I'm incredibly concerned on the commercial. So
I do disagree with that with Commissioner Shemke because, as far as the commercial side, because we can't have people locating businesses in Leavenworth County for the sole reason that they can skirt around safety issues when it comes to fire suppression. And as Mr. LOUGHRY stated, this isn't about keeping the buildings next door from burning down. That's what the fire department does a lot of times. They go ahead and let a structure take itself on out while they protect the surrounding structures. But we have to make sure that people can exit facilities safely. And one of the things that allows for that is some form of fire suppression, whether it be water, foam, whatever it is. I mean, we do that as a means of getting people out of a place with the minimum amount of harm and injury. And so I don't want Leavenworth County to be viewed as the place that you can come locate a business, because then you can cut corners and save money while putting other people at risk. I really feel that is not, I don't want that kind of development here.
Yeah, I'm saying if one of these large industrial warehouse groups wants to come in and build 1 million square feet,
I want them to have fire suppression.
I'm saying that could be a deal breaker.
Well, if it's a deal breaker, it is.
You know, they're not storing people.
Look, can I ask you a question?
They have employed people.
Understood.
If we amended the square footage on the commercial to a higher number, would that get you there?
I mean, it'd help. I don't know what that number is. So while I said I'm more supportive on the residential side, because I think that applies to a much larger group than what Vicky is referencing. The residential, I can support. The commercial, I'm still struggling with. So,
Well, is Commissioner
If we,
Stephen willing to?
We amend, it's still got to go back to planning commission, correct? If we amend on the square footage of the commercial building? Okay, it doesn't?
No, Mr. Chairman, I believe that this board could amend the proposed resolution to exclude certain parts of the county. The statute explicitly allows that.
Or the square footage?
Or the square footage. Or you could adopt it with both amendments, neither amendments. But at the same time, the way the statutes on building codes are set out, it clearly contemplates that from time to time those codes will change, and that it's to be reviewed more or less constantly, much as comprehensive plan is. So I would suggest that consider the amendments that have been proposed this morning. If at some point in the future this resolution needs to be amended, you amend the resolution.
And I understand what you're saying about safety issues, but I think you need to weigh out what you're asking for. I don't believe that there's been any issues that warrant the measure that we're taking. By saying no to 20 barn home permits that were issued last year, that's what this would be doing. Those 20 barn homes would not be built the same way they were under this resolution.
But I guess we did find out, we did some research, Miami County allows those to be constructed as long as they follow the
key is as long as they're built to code. By the time you build a barn home to code, the expense is the same as if you built a regular house. So it defeats the purpose of
But if one family is burned and loses their lives, we'd be the ones that said that was okay.
I'm not saying that's okay. I'm saying you need to weigh out what's actually happened with what you're asking for. Also, the insurance agents and companies that I talked to said this is going to raise people's insurance.
But
I
the ones
don't.
that I spoke to said it wouldn't.
I don't think raising people's insurance and saying no to barn homes is worth what you're asking for.
But we have no real evidence that it would raise anybody's premium because of the way premiums are done. And we've been through that, is the premiums are based on a lot of different factors, including your credit rating and all the things that Commissioner KAAZ went over last time.
It's a hard way to find out who's right.
Well, we should have a motion and a second on the floor unless somebody withdraws their motion or their second. If that were to occur, would you make a motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we can go ahead and vote. If it fails, you can make your motion. So if there's no further discussion, voting.
Aye.
Nay.
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 Aye.
And I'd like to make a motion that we pass Resolution 2020-39, adopting 2006 International Building Codes, excluding Easton and Kickapoo Township from said resolution.
Second.
Would that still be the January 1st effective deadline?
January 1st effective date.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? And voting.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
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 Commissioners, we'll prepare an amended resolution for execution by the board.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Moving right along. Commissioners, the second item I have before you is Resolution 2020-48. This is a resolution to consider the rezoning of County Road 1. The request to rezone would follow the adopted Land Use A map, which you should all have a copy of. This, as you very well know, has been before you about a year ago, maybe a little bit more. The board recently requested staff take it off of the table and bring it back before you. We did notify the affected property owners again so that they all had an opportunity to provide any written correspondence or to come to the meeting. There have not been any changes to the requested resolution from last year. It said it is to adopt the zoning district as was approved and adopted in Land Use Map A as a future land use map. I will say that the Planning Commission a year ago, they voted to recommend approval of the rezoning. I'll answer any questions that you may have, as will Mr. LOUGHRY or Mr.
I have a question.
Harris, I'm sure. Yeah.
If you look south of Hempel, that RR40, am I correct that RR40 is not a classification that we have anywhere else in the county, but this would be the only place in Leavenworth County that we'd have an RR40 designation?
Yeah, so we do, our zoning and subdivision regulations do have a classification for RR40. It's been in there since at least 2006. We do not currently have anything that's zoned RR40. You are absolutely correct about that. I will state that the vast majority of that area is floodplain. As you may recall, there was a lot of public input in this map, and one of the overwhelming requests was to preserve farmland. And because this was heavily floodplain area, the consultants at the time saw that as a way to compromise with some of the people who, were very adamant that this corridor not be developed at all. So this was kind of a low-hanging fruit, if you will, because it'll be difficult to develop that portion anyway. That doesn't mean it couldn't be done. Certainly engineering can make lots and lots of things work. So that being said, it is currently zoned as RR5, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. So if someone wanted to develop it at RR5 currently, they could certainly do so. And then again, also, as you are aware, this has been an item that has been around for a couple of years, and so when this land use map was adopted, that there was a board that was more supportive of the RR40. But again, it is currently zoned RR5, so it could be developed at RR5. It is substantial floodplain, though, so that's something to keep in mind.
So this is our latest comprehensive plan land
and
use.
the comp plan doesn't match the land use.
And it doesn't match this at all.
No.
And so you're going to be having neighbors on one section that are going to have this R2.5, and this, because they happen to be in this zone, they're
R40.
right. So
In a floodplain,
I'm questioning whether
never flood.
this has become out of date, and it should
The
be
land
brought
use
use.
or the comp plan.
The zoning probably should be
To match the comp plan?
matching our comp plan.
Okay.
That's just,
Yeah, I thought the comp plan would be a little closer to the land use study, so.
Well, I think, again, what Crystal was saying is 3 years ago when this was completed, that was the direction the comp plan was also going, that there would be RR40 in the county and a lot more R5 and even some RR10. That's the direction the comp plan was going. I think you might even remember the first time that Olson came in and met with you all with the comp plan. That was some of the discussion. The direction they got from the new board at that time was, no, we're more for the 5 and the 2.5. And then even when it came back just recently when you approved it, we reallocated everything south of basically 2440 into the R 2.5. That's why this plan doesn't match the new comp plan that was just developed. Because, like anything, over a course of 3 years, ideas change, and the philosophy of the board changed. So that's where it is, but this reflects the land use plan that is in place in this corridor right now. And that's why we brought it to you as presented. I think you're right that those two areas, the RR40 and the RR5, do not match with the rest of the land down there. But I believe the option here is approve it as proposed or send it back for revision to the Planning Commission.
If it went back for revision, it would be revision of the land use plan first, and then later the actual zoning would have to comply with that. Is that correct?
Go ahead, Counselor.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, this is somewhat of an issue of balance. You are required by law to have a comprehensive land use plan for the county. Leavenworth County has chosen to also have zoning. The comprehensive plan is a guide. The zoning is I'll call it the nuts and bolts. It's on the ground. It controls the actual use. Because they are separate and because you are required annually to review your comprehensive plan, there has to be a balancing. And I don't think it's ever contemplated that they would be exactly in lockstep. So I think if you were to refer this back to the Planning Commission by voting by a 2/3 vote, which means 4-1, to deny the recommendation of the adoption of this rezoning schedule by the Planning Commission, that you could do so and send it to the Planning Commission with direction as to what specific changes you would wish to have. In all likelihood, those changes would require that the Planning Commission republish and remail notice for the consideration of that rezoning by the Planning Commission, conduct that hearing, make their recommendations, and send it back to you. I do not believe that the amendment of your comprehensive plan would be a prerequisite to that. I think it's the contemplation of this board that you will be reconsidering or reviewing your comprehensive plan annually, commencing sometime at mid-year.
But that land use plan that's in place right now, really wouldn't, you're saying they could go back and go ahead and review the zoning without even changing that?
Yes. The comprehensive plan, again, is a guide. It's not an absolute mandate. The zoning is what actually controls the use. Again, you're required to have a comprehensive plan. Zoning should generally follow that comprehensive plan, but the comprehensive plan is a living document and changes. What I'm saying is you would not necessarily have to make the amendment of the current comprehensive plan a prerequisite to the consideration of any modifications to this proposed rezoning by the Planning Commission.
And when we're saying comprehensive plan, we're talking about the County Road 1 comprehensive plan. Or are you talking about the overall?
The overall comprehensive plan.
But we have a land use plan in place for County Road 1 right now, which is separate.
Yes.
We do, yeah, but we...
Right. So that would be, it seems, I'm just talking out loud, I'm just thinking that the Planning Commission probably should amend that land use plan and then make their zoning conform to the new, however they amend it.
Commissioner, the land use plan for County Road 1, the corridor, was, I would have to caption it as a very informal plan. Again, much like your comprehensive plan, it was a guide. It's not a legal mandate.
Okay. And remember, we had probably 10 years worth of moratorium that you couldn't build down there. If you wanted to build a barn, you had to come up here and beg the commissioners for a building permit.
And I think one thing to remember is it's important that we're supposed to review the comp plan every year.
We will.
And we have
as long
not.
as we're here, we will.
Exactly. And we have not done that.
And we can make those adjustments.
Yeah, we can change it every year. So,
Adjust it every year.
yeah.
But if you're rezoning, this is something that couldn't be changed every year. I mean, if we rezone and we add R40 to the the zoning, that's the way it's going to be zoned.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I don't wish to overly complicate this. I would remind you, though, if, for example, I owned a tract of property within the proposed rezoning area, and you were to adopt that rezoning schedule today, and I'm not even going to pick a category, but I did not like that rezoning category, and I had some idea for the use of my property that I wished to have rezoned to a different category, I could file for that rezoning tomorrow. It would rezone, if you were to adopt this resolution, it would rezone the properties, but that rezoning would not be perpetual. It could be changed by an individual owner of those parcels applying for a rezoning. It would then come before the Planning Commission and this board following the procedure for rezonings, which is more or less what you're doing today.
But why would, I guess the caveat to that is, why would we take and adopt a zoning plan that's completely different from our comprehensive plan? I mean, it seems like to me if this is going to be done, it should be done right. Mm-hmm. And it should conform to this comprehensive plan as far as the zoning. We shouldn't have like a little section that's completely different.
Okay.
Well, no, I mean, to follow what Mike said, I mean, I think we've had lots of discussions around 2.5 and what it means and providing greater flexibility. What ultimately the zone means has nothing to do with the use is. The current use remains. Future use can remain. I think it does make sense to have more consistency rather than less consistency. And if you want to keep a 200-acre parcel together and just have a small home on it, you can do that. It doesn't matter what the County Road 1 rezone looks like. I know that we've had obviously a lot of emails and questions on the topic, and a couple of them that I had just written down to get feedback was that, again, if somebody wanted to move forward with some type of development, whether residential or commercial, would lesser be accepted? So if they had a lesser use, meaning maybe it's not as dense, right, but there's still a project to move forward, what does that look like, or what would our position be? And then also we have to remember we sure make a lot of decisions and don't have the infrastructure in place to support it. And that's the other thing that's pretty frustrating.
That's what I was talking about earlier on the water line.
Right. So again, whether it's I'm sitting here arguing about sprinklers on the commercial side or this and the other, it becomes very prohibitive if we don't have plans to work through the infrastructure shortage that exists again throughout the county. So my comments are just I agree, Mike. I think it needs to be done right. I think there needs to be consistency. I think we want to provide greater flexibility. We've been sitting here, for years talking about again. Allowing more development, allowing people to build more homes. That seems to be one of the products we're good at, and not wanting to slow that down. But again, just to be thinking about if, regardless of the rezone, if there's a lesser use, what's our position on that going to be? And then ultimately, we still don't have, as far as I know, a plan to get the infrastructure that's necessary for what we're being asked for. So.
Well, and I think two things. One, we need to make sure we remember this isn't a frozen in time document. It's a living, breathing document that we're going to update every year. The comp plan I'm talking about, which the zoning map's based on, mm-hmm. But it's still a moving target. Another thing I think that a lot of people don't understand is just because we change the land use or the comp plan or the zoning map for these parcels, if they're used for agricultural right now, and we zone it industrial, that doesn't mean you have to change how you're using the property. You can keep using it the same way you're using it. Your taxes don't change. We're not mandating that you change how you're using the property. I think a lot of people are confused thinking their taxes are going to go up if they've got an 80-acre farm that's going to get zoned commercial or industrial. They're not. Your taxes are based on use. Whatever you're using it for now, if you keep using it like that, whether it's ag or residential, that's the way your taxes are going to remain. I think that's the biggest confusion is people think just because we're rezoning this as industrial or commercial, they've got to change the way they're using the property or their taxes are going to go up, and that's not the case.
Mine go up every year and I don't change.
It's not industrial or commercial. As long as you're using it the way you're using it, you can continue to do that. Doesn't matter what we zone it or what the comp plan or land use map show.
Okay. If nobody else has anything, I'll open up the public hearing. And we have some people that was wanting to speak in the public hearing. And the first one would be Don Budd. Don Budd here. Okay, then we'll move to the next one. It'd be Ann
Mr. Chairman,
Brokaw.
before you proceed, I believe I forwarded to each of the commissioners an email that I'd received from Mr. Budd with his comments regarding the proposed rezoning, and he had asked me that I forward them to you and that they be made part of the record.
Okay, I don't believe I got it with me.
But I don't believe Mr. Budd had intended to be present or call in. He did offer, as I said in my email, I thought rather his well-stated position.
Right. Yeah, I got it. I don't have it with me.
I thought I brought it, but I brought the wrong one. I brought one from
Okay.
somebody else.
Well, we can enter Mr. Budd's in our minutes. Okay, then Ann Brokaw.
My name is Ann Brokoff. I'm at 21060 Loring Road in Linwood, and I'm here representing Rural Leavenworth, Inc.
Good morning.
Good morning to all of you. I do have some comments I'd like to make, but I would like to begin with a question that follows on with what Commissioner Stieben was saying. I would like to know how the commission or how planning and zoning progressed from the Concept A land use map that was approved by the commission on February 6th, 2019, and appears on page 12 of the comprehensive plan, showing the acreage that Commissioner Stieben was referring to as expected to be zoned as agricultural because it is a watershed. That map, which is in the comprehensive plan, which the commission, I believe, approved, shows that as agricultural, yet then it reappears on page 89 as zoned RR40, which is worlds away from being agricultural. I'd like to know, I have the final version of the comprehensive plan on my computer right here, so I don't understand the discrepancy.
RR40, sorry, Commissioners, RR40 is, as far as our zoning and subdivision regulations, that is the threshold for where our department has determined that is agriculture. If you have 40 acres or more, our department cannot regulate your buildings. We can still say you have to have setbacks and you need a building permit, but we don't charge for building permits. We cannot regulate what you do on your property. It is agriculture. It is exempt from the zoning and subdivision regulations. So to indicate that RR40 is not agricultural is a fallacy and it's incorrect.
Okay. So it's a conflict of language as opposed to a conflict in fact. So if at some point when you're updating, if there's a way to update or footnote the language, I think sometimes that is confusing to people and it spurs opposition where in fact perhaps there should not be any. And so
RR40 can indeed be ag.
It is ag. It is.
Right.
It's saying the same thing.
I think that should be a footnote when we refer to plans to like a land use plan that uses different language. That sows confusion. So that would be a point for the update when the comprehensive plan is reviewed.
It's saying the same thing. It's just worded differently.
Worded differently.
Well, it's even more confusing if you have a county this size that doesn't have an instance of RR40 anyway.
Well, and that is, I'm just saying, I think language sometimes causes confusion, and so that would be something to footnote.
So,
because I know I have.
If we don't move ahead with this, there won't be any RR40. This will be the only RR40 in the county created by this zoning.
No land use.
As far as the zoning today, if we moved ahead with the zoning today, this would be the only RR40 in the county. Correct, Crystal?
Correct.
That's correct.
So thank you for clarifying that point. I'd like to move on because I know I only have a little bit of time. I urge you to vote no on this resolution. I understand that the County Road 1 land use plan was created to facilitate development. The county has long wanted to recoup costs associated with the I-70 interchange project, and development along CR1 could help reduce the property tax burden on county residents. All of this makes sense. What doesn't is the proposal to rezone more than 9,000 acres of private property all at once. One factor in my position is opposition from residents living within the corridor who do understand that taxes and their usage are not going to have to change, yet they do not want their properties rezoned. And I urge you to listen to constituents of the 5th District in this issue, as you just so recently did on another issue in another district. Beyond that, rezoning doesn't make sense. It's an expected step in the development process, and it would take much more than changing the zoning in advance of any potential developer interest to make these decidedly rural properties development ready. In addition, rezoning preemptively does not appear to be common practice. For example, the City of Gardner specifically chose not to rezone after adopting its plan to interface with Interstate 35 in 2016, and that has in no way impeded development there. The only way rezoning now streamlines development is by eliminating the requirements for public notice and public hearings that now take place on a case-by-case basis. I worry about that because the I-70 interchange effectively makes County Road 1 Leavenworth County's front door. If the county gets development right here, it could spur continued growth throughout the entire county. If we get it wrong, it could damage Leavenworth County's image, character, and quality of life, which are all among its marketable qualities. As such, I believe there should be a higher standard, one that goes beyond staff-level decision-making, and a greater vision for what this area can be. Leaving zoning as it is allows the public, the Planning Commission, the Board of County Commissioners, and our Planning and Zoning Department, which has worked so hard on this issue, it gives them greater flexibility and oversight of County Road 1 and more input into its growth while respecting private property rights. The Land Use Plan and the Leavenworth County Comprehensive Plan should both be used as guiding documents in these decisions, and I believe the corridor should be developed. That's where growth will come. But it should not be rezoned in this manner at this time. Please vote no on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next would be Christine Cruz.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name's Christine Cruz. I live at 21777 Cantrell Road. I'm an affected landowner. I would also urge you to vote no on this rezoning. I've spoken on this before, but to reiterate what I have written in written letters to you, as well as spoken before in front of the commission, there's no need for this. You have a comprehensive plan for the entire county, and the only sliver that you're rezoning preemptively is ours. It almost feels punitive. You have a plan in place, that's awesome. And like Ann, I'm for development as well, but I am not for this type of special treatment for our area. You say that we're confused, that we don't understand we can continue to use our land like we're using it now, and that our taxes, and that we're confused about the taxes. I am confused about none of those issues. I am not happy that the owners who pay the taxes and paid for the land don't get to decide how their land is zoned. They're just having that decision taken away from them by the government. I also do not like the fact that across the street from my house, there will be land zoned industrial, which could lay fallow for 20 years if, it's an example of what's happened the last 20 years in that area. But it could discourage potential buyers who might want to purchase my home or purchase any other homes I might decide to develop on my land just by sitting there being zoned into industrial, because future, you don't know what's going to happen in the future, but you know that the county has decided that some sort of dog food plant or warehousing or whatever is going to go in across the street, which actually may never happen. You have a plan, and I believe it's a good plan in place, but as has been discussed here this morning, it's flexible. You're going to review it annually. There could be changes. So treat our area like you're treating the rest of the county, and leave it in planning and let the owners and developers decide on the zoning. I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I have a question for Crystal. Clarification on the light industrial by the turnpike. Can you clarify what would be allowed and what would not be allowed? I think there's some questions among constituents about that.
So, yeah, I know there is quite a bit of misunderstanding about what would be considered light industrial and what would be considered, heavy industrial and such. We have amended our zoning and subdivision regulations, Article 19, to help clarify that. There's also light industrial is typically would not be, let me think of more what it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be a tannery. It wouldn't be slaughtering. It would not be the manufacturing of animal byproducts. It would be more, think of like your technology sort of developments. It would be a dog food plant. That would be pretty borderline, I would say. It would kind of depend on.
What about an Amazon warehouse?
An Amazon warehouse would definitely be considered light industrial. I think, a UPS hub, that would also be more in your light industrial.
But a chicken processing facility
would not
fit
be.
into light industrial.
No. Our zoning and subdivision regulations would consider that to be heavy industrial, not light industrial. We also, staff over the last year or so has worked considerably on developing more specific guidelines that would go into our zoning and subdivision regulations that would really help clarify exactly what is and is not allowed. That hasn't been brought forward yet simply because we don't want to add a bunch of things to our zoning and subdivision regulations if we don't actually have those zoning districts, because it just complicates things. And it's also things that need to be, we've worked with our planning commission and staff has worked on it. We've worked with a couple of surrounding communities and gotten their input. So to take it to the planning commission for official approval and obviously to the board, we would want that to make sure that, as Commissioner Shimke puts it, it's done correctly and that it's as comprehensive as can possibly be. But yeah, just to clarify, we did update the table of uses, which was something that was requested we do prior to bringing this forward. And I think that doing that has helped clarify, what the difference is between light and limited industrial and heavy industrial. So the planned industrial would be more, light industrial and limited industrial type uses, but not heavy industrial uses.
So let me just ask you a question. If this went back and we said below Hempel Road, make it conform to this, how long of a process would that take?
So it is my understanding, and Mr. Van Paris can certainly correct me if I am wrong, if this board wished to remand this to the Planning Commission, for the Planning Commission to consider a lesser zoning, which is essentially what we would be doing, than a lesser zoning than what is proposed, the Planning Commission could consider that. If they wished to act upon it, we would have to start the process again. We would have to re-notify. I would say at the very earliest, at that point, we would probably be looking at an April Planning Commission, probably close to May, before it came back before the Board of County Commissioners.
Before it got, it'd be time to review the comprehensive plan again.
I would just like to just clarify one thing, just so everybody is aware. When the comprehensive plan, when we sent out RFQ and an RFP on the comprehensive plan, it was specifically stated that because we had just adopted this land use plan, that the consultant would not consider County Road 1 because we had just adopted this. So I think when we say that it wasn't done correctly, I think that's an unfair characterization because they were specifically told that has been adopted. Do not consider that in this comprehensive plan. So they did, and staff did what they were instructed to do.
That is correct. It was passed and put on hold till the comp plan was done.
And maybe that's not exactly worded correctly, but the way as time goes on and things change and as we have the adopted comprehensive plan, it now seems that adopting some of those new categories don't really fit in with our adopted plan, and that's the only issue.
And that's certainly true. I know we're kind of focused there at 230th and Cantrell in those areas, and I might be opening up a can of worms here, but that PR1 up near Tonganoxie, that is a drastically different zoning district than what is just to the east of it. This entire corridor is a drastic change from what the rest of the county is. There's no doubt about that, and that was the intention of it, was this is where we were going to have development. I can certainly appreciate the questions about the RR40 zoning and the RR5, and yes, it was determined with the comprehensive plan that if it was on a paved a paved surface, that the zoning needed to be RR 2.5. So I can certainly appreciate that, but, and if that's something that this board wants to consider amending, then by all means, then let's do it, and we can certainly amend it. But this whole corridor is meant to be different.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak in the public hearing portion of this meeting?
Joe Herron, District 2. Morning, Commissioners.
What?
I did send an email, and I assume also everybody got that, but my question is on procedure. Krista just said amended. Earlier was said that if you were going to adjust from the current approved plan, it had to go back to Planning Commission. If you were going to rezone the corridor, we just approved an adjusted building code without going back to Planning Commission, so wouldn't that be kind of the same thing?
No.
Yes, I don't know. I don't understand that, but
Two different statutes.
okay. That was my only question. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I have a follow-up to that. If we have this 9,000 acre plan, if our board just decided we were going to leave zoning below a certain point in the plan and rezone the rest as we have notified people, we're not really affecting those people that are below that point because we're not changing the zoning. The only zoning that changes is the ones that have been notified. Why is it that we would have to re-notify everyone?
One, you could direct that question to the state legislature because they wrote the law. And here are the three options that you are allowed by law. You can adopt the recommendation of the Planning Commission, which would be a vote of aye to adopt the resolution as presented to you and recommended by the Planning Commission. The second is to vote to not adopt the resolution as recommended to you by the Planning Commission by a 2/3 vote, which would, given the composition of this body, would require a 4-1 vote against adopting the resolution. If you did so, that'd be the end of it. There'd be no rezoning on County Road 1 corridor at all. Your third option is to refer the matter back to the Planning Commission with specific recommendations to the Planning Commission on the issues you would wish them to re-examine. Because I anticipate, and I believe I think it would occur, that the recommendations of the Commission would lead to considerations of a lesser change in the proposed rezoning, that the Planning Commission would get it back, conduct internal hearings at their meetings, depending on what they finally determine to be appropriate, would in all likelihood email notice to the persons affected by any proposed rezoning, republish the matter, conduct a public hearing, issue recommendations to return the matter back to the board. I believe Ms. Voth is accurate by my calculation. If you were to take the third option, the step of the third option today, and refer the matter back to the Planning Commission, you probably should not anticipate getting a recommendation back to you prior to May, which does roughly put it in the same time frame of the review of the comprehensive plan. However, even keeping them separately, those are your three options, and I'd be happy to answer any further questions. But those are the three options that are allowed to you by state law.
Or the fourth option would be adopt it and address it in the first go-around for the review.
You could do that, Commissioner Culbertson, that's correct. But if you made changes, it would require a rezoning, so you'd go back through this process again.
Because it would be the zoning map, not the comp plan.
Yes.
All right.
I mean, my comment on that is, why would we adopt a zoning map that's not right, according to our comprehensive plan? We should do it right. I know it's going to take a couple more months, but we should do it right. Otherwise, we're adopting something that we don't even ourselves agree with.
Anyone else wishing to speak in the public hearing? Then I'll close the public hearing and go back to regular session. So you're looking at them, if it gets kicked down the road another May, and then we'd be time to look at the comp plan again to make any adjustments on that, or recommendations, I guess.
It'll be summer.
Maybe we'll have our FEMA money from Linwood Tornado.
You won't. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, if I could offer this, were you to take step number 3, that would not preclude any property owner within the area from applying for a rezoning if they wished to. They could do that at any time. So that does not create any form of a moratorium with respect to any person's choice as to whether or not they wish to rezone their property within that area.
So, excuse me, so that's if we adopted the resolution, the map, at any point in time, any property owner can come in and request rezoning
Yes,
to any zoning classification that they so choose.
they-
And then it just goes through the through the process.
it'd go through the normal rezoning process. Because this is of such size, it has a special process to go through. But the actions for rezoning generally are an application, consideration by staff, then consideration by the Planning Commission, hearing by the Planning Commission, forwarding of a recommendation to this board conducting not necessarily another public hearing, but a hearing on the recommendation of the Planning Commission.
Okay, so basically what you're saying, if I'm hearing correctly, is that same process either way. If we were not to adopt this, if we were to leave things status quo, did nothing, let's just say, then anybody that wants new zoning, wants something zoned a different way, goes through the exact same process.
Yes.
Asks for a change of zoning.
Yes.
So,
Except this is the zoning right now, though.
Commissioner KAAZ, I think.
No, it
Well-
would still have to go through the rezoning change.
right.
Well, if they were wanting to change how their property was zoned.
Commissioner KAAZ, if I understand, I think where you're going, and why do this at all, that's a policy matter.
No,
your
I'm not
attorney.
saying why do this at all. I'm saying you can do this, but anybody can come in and then ask for a rezone.
On their
Their-
property.
Yes.
of their
Notify everyone within
parcel.
1,000 feet.
Yeah, but that's
They
not-
would not
challenge
be,
it.
They would not be prohibited from requesting a rezone.
Okay.
And if you took no action today, they are not prohibited from requesting a rezoning.
Right.
But
I'm
that's
just
on
saying
their
either way.
property. I think the issue is people aren't so concerned about their property. You know, if they want to rezone their property, yeah, they can do that. But I think what it really boils down to is people are concerned about what's going to happen on the neighboring property, which they wouldn't be able to control with a rezone. They can only rezone their own property. But I think what this really boils down to is they're concerned about the adjacent property, what's going to happen on the property next to them.
And I think to some extent, I have some concerns regarding the inability of, or having I have some concerns of planning and zoning just arbitrarily making a decision that without input from the Board of County Commissioners, because we have adopted this, so that there isn't a discussion to make certain that well, I know we have the table of uses.
Correct, we have the table.
That helps with those things, but just within that there's kind of like no process for the neighboring properties to address to have concerns.
They would be notified and allowed to speak at the public hearing and present their testimony and evidence to
But
the
if
planning.
there's-
Rezone, not for an allowed use. I think what you're
Right.
looking at is.
As if it's different.
If it's rezoned and there's an allowed use, it's allowed. There's no
Right.
public hearing, which I think is the intent of zoning typically. So that if I want to purchase that property, I know before I purchase it, this is an allowed use. If I buy it, I can do it, versus taking that risk of if I purchase this ground, and then I go through the public hearing process, and for whatever reason the board decides not to approve it, then I'm out. I think that's the whole idea of the zoning. Whether you have it or not, that's the concept, so the developers know exactly what is allowed and isn't allowed.
So I have a question, Mr. Counselor. If here we have the R40, that this, if we rezone this above Cantrell Road, we're going to create this R40. Currently, that's zoned as R5. If I'm a property owner in this R40, and then I need to sell my home, and this board now has made that an R40 classification, am I going to have to go through a rezone in order to sell my home? It's classified as R5 right now, and we're going to make it into R40. So we restricted the property rights of these people?
Well, any zoning restricts property rights.
Well, but
however, Commissioner, I'm not sure the size of the parcels within that proposed R40 zone are. I would presume they would have to be 40 acres or more. So the answer would be, if you were within that area designated as R40 and you owned a single-family residence and you wish to sell it, you would be able to do so. The buyer would be residing within an R40 zoning area, and they would more or less be restricted to agricultural use.
So the point is, if they wanted to do any type of, lot split or, offer, sell a parcel or parcels, they wouldn't be able to do so without coming in to get it rezoned, which, based on what the last few years have been, likely if somebody comes in with a tract of that size and is looking for support for, say, 2.5, they would likely get it. That has been the consensus of the board. So,
Commissioner KAAZ used a word, and I think it's a good word to keep in mind, that is arbitrary. These laws, as imperfect as they may be, are designed to prevent arbitrary actions so that property owners or potential property owners are given as much information as to what they can and cannot do with their property, and that the decision to place those restrictions on the property are adopted through an open and considered process. Arbitrary decisions are, they're not only they're disfavored by the law, and you can set aside decisions that are arbitrary and capricious. But the system, Commissioner Shimke, to use your example, I buy the R40 tract. I wish to subdivide it into 2.5 acre parcels. I would need to apply first for a rezoning, and then I would need to go through a subdivision procedure that provides the adjoining property owners notice of the proposed change in the use. It goes through the staff review before being forwarded to the Planning Commission, then the Planning Commission to this body. There are public hearings. All of the actions have to be taken in public, and it affords as open and participatory a process as can be devised as of today.
And that is also true with the comp plan, correct?
Yes.
Crystal, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the R40 is designed to keep bigger tracts intact so that down the road an industry or business or commercial venture would have a better ideal size tract to work with instead of a bunch of chopped up 2.5 acre residential lots.
Sure. So that's kind of a multifaceted question, so I'll do my best to answer it. Yes, when we were originally talking, as Mr. LOUGHRY stated, previously we had talked about having large acre zoning all throughout the county, 20 and 40 acre, zoning. And yes, certainly the idea was, especially around the cities, that you are preserving large tracts of land for prime development. In this particular instance, again, because this is substantially floodplain, I should have brought a floodplain map to you. This is substantially within the floodplain. This was an attempt on the consultant's part and on staff's part to preserve some of the agricultural heritage in that area, because as you may very well be aware, while you can develop in the floodplain, it is costly, it is difficult, it takes significant permitting both from my office and from the state. However, you can have agricultural activities within the floodplain with very little intervention from my department and from the state. So it was an attempt to preserve agriculture down in the corridor. Now, that being said, one of the directions that this board has given staff repeatedly is that if a zoning district abuts another zoning district, in this case, or R40 abuts the planned industrial, if someone were to come in and they had very deep pockets and were able to make this particular land buildable for an industrial or a residential type use, there's also PR2 up to the north there. The direction of this board is that staff would favorably consider that request because the zoning abuts like zoning.
Stair step it.
So that would be something that my department would certainly consider. Again, like I said, I understand that it's R40 and that seems really large, and certainly it is, especially compared to the rest of the county. But again, it's heavily covered in floodplain and just would be really difficult to develop. Again, that doesn't mean it's impossible. Money can do a lot of things, certainly. That being said, there are plenty of areas within this corridor that aren't covered in floodplain that would be much easier to develop.
Any other questions of Crystal or any other staff? Mr. Stevens, your area.
Well, I guess I'd just like to.
Well, the floodplain is an important point because that makes it a moot point to further subdivide it into smaller tracts if it's in the floodplain. Yeah.
It's just being consistent with what we've done in the other.
Yeah, and I've got a floodplain map.
You know,
it's half floodplain.
9 Mile Creek.
Yeah, I think it is.
You know, I think the one thing that we need to keep in mind is that just with some of this, just as we're thinking about it, is that what we have here is also, it's not short-term thinking. This is not short-term looking like next year, 5 years from now. I think that this is an ability of the county or the planning or whatever to look 25 years down the road, just to kind of get a look to the distant future. And if we keep just staying narrow for, 5 years from now, 5 years from now, 5 years from now, we restrict that long range look at what we need to do with infrastructure, what we need to do to make sure that we bring utilities and plan effectively for the types of utilities that we might need for any kind of way future development. Because right now, as Commissioner Shimke said, this is kind of like, there's nothing there. We can't, we can.
No water, sewer, gas.
Right. So in order to begin to plan and look at how we can carefully plan for those types of investments and partnerships, even if it's public-private, whatever it is, and even for the planning department and things to be able to do that, you have to have an idea of where you want to go. So we have individuals in the county that say, we don't want to go anywhere but where we are, which is rural, agricultural, residential, bedroom, community type development. That's on one side. And then there is, in order to maintain what we need to maintain as a county and to keep things moving forward without our taxes continuing to go up as far as residential and property taxes to that extent, then we have to look at what type of industry do we want. What do we want that can offset that 6-to-1 to become a 2-to-1 return on our investments. And so I think that
we haven't got any return on it.
But we have to begin to look at how do we get there, though, because one of the things that we have to realize is that we have to plan on what do we want, how do we attract it there, and then what are we going to be responsible for paying for in order to get that there.
And I think I agree with the Commissioner KAAZ. I think I'm saying the same thing. We got to stop kicking the can down the street. In the beginning of this, I know Dave and Doug were both here 10 years ago or 15 or whenever this I-70 interchange was an idea. And I-
The ribbon in 09.
And I kept thinking, this should have been done then.
Yeah, that's
all
when
this
we should have
rezoning
this.
should have been
It should have
done
been
Exactly.
done before they
before
chose
they got
the
the
spot
interchange.
where the interchange.
That's right.
Right.
And I kept thinking, why didn't they do that? And now I think I understand why they didn't do it then. They're kicking the can down the street, and we need to stop doing
If they would have
that.
done the study, there might have been another city competing for the interchange instead of Tonganoxie.
Yeah,
It could have been in the Baser area.
yeah. So that's why I'm saying the same thing, is we need to stop kicking the can down the street.
Well,
Well-
I'm sure I'll sound like a broken record, but we talk about this bedroom community, or we talk about why we're such advocates for 2.5, and it's because we don't have connectivity. Businesses, big business, big industry, they won't build in areas that we would suggest it should go because our connectivity doesn't allow it.
Right.
This is when you talk about I think one of the comments today was front door, and I don't disagree. There is not a more connected area. This is the only place I can think of currently that's on an interstate that allows for speeds in excess of 50 that doesn't have 32 stoplights between 2 points of interest. It's seriously the only one.
And somebody brought up, what's the difference between 5 minutes or 15 minutes? It can't be that much difference. Yeah, there is a huge difference. A difference on whether a business locates there or not between 5 and 15 minutes. And I don't think people understand that.
I understand you not wanting to kick the can down the road, and I agree with that on so many things. But if it's a different, we've been, how many years, 12 years? I mean, if it's the difference between doing it right and kicking it down so it doesn't come to here until June, I think doing it right is making it conform to the comprehensive plan that we just adopted, not creating some new categories that don't make any sense. And that would be doing it right. And so,
And Mike, just to be clear, that is the R40 being our 2.5.
and the other changes that Crystal mentioned up north where it doesn't conform to, it needs to be conforming to this plan.
I just disagree with that. I mean,
But when you
just
say-
as a general rule.
Well, I
it needs to
mean,
conform, because one is something that we can, it's kind of like we can look at this and see past past an annual review.
well,
See
you're always,
past looking at every year where we are, and then we can have something that's out there more or
but
less.
why shouldn't this just be, this area, why shouldn't it just be incorporated into part of this? And then when we do that overall review, that this is done together? Why do we need to segregate it out separately? I think that's what some of the folks are thinking, is why segregate this out? It should be treated like the rest of the county.
Well, that's why I brought up the point of what the 40-acre purpose is. And when you say doing it right, you can't do 2.5-acre tracts in the floodplain, so subtract that out first, and then the 40-acre idea is to protect the larger tracts so that they can be done with those for the better use down the road.
I wanted to protect the 40-acre tracts all over the county, just so people couldn't come in and put a bunch of developments, island developments and things in there. I think that we need to make sure we're developing as close to the cities and to the highways, as we can, so that we're not disrupting the rural life that is available to people out in the county.
But the people that want to live there don't want to live near the city. They want to be out in the country.
Right, I'm just saying.
And the people that own the property are willing to sell it to them.
We have so many different things in such a small area that I think it creates some confusion. Like
Right.
I've struggled with using the word rural, even if the state of Kansas
Right.
uses it or not, when you're 5 minutes from town or you're on 70-mile-an-hour roadways.
It's exurban, sort of.
It's just difficult. I mean, there's lots of places that are truly rural that don't have these discussions, and they're also not 5 minutes from town, 5 minutes from a school, 5 minutes from 10 minutes from Kansas City.
Yeah.
I can go Alexandria
Well,
Township.
Mr. Chairman, if I could be recognized to make a motion.
You can. You
Mis-
are.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I move that the rezoning map to be incorporated into the resolution as Exhibit A and the subsequent rezoning be amended to exclude from rezoning all of that area south of Hempel Road with the exception of that area immediately near the intersection of County Road 1 and the Turnpike. The area amended to light industrial. My motion is also to vote to disapprove the recommendation of the Planning Commission as submitted and to refer the matter back to the Planning Commission with direction to review the changes proposed as well as changes as may be justified by recently adopted county comprehensive plan.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
South of Hempel Road, is that what you said?
Yeah, that'll get it to the turnpike.
But it includes the area. This motion specifically
you're
includes the light industrial by the Turnpike is included.
So basically, there's 4 sections.
So if you look at the map, north of Hempel Road, which is
I'm talking about South Hempel Road.
right, south would stay as is, except it would be referred, south would basically be referred back to the Planning Commission. And
Which is the
this
4
is basically the
sections that surround
instructions.
I-70.
Right. Well, let me look at the map.
Yeah, which is I-70, which doesn't make
And even south of there.
Oh, so what I'm saying
Yeah.
is between Hempel and Cantrell.
Everything south of
There are
Hempel.
4 sections, which are the 4 corners.
It's like
of that.
80% of the area.
Yeah.
We'll need a second before we can get into too deep a discussion here.
I could kind of agree on the south end, but that's like 80% of the area we're talking about. Hempel, you said Hempel.
Right, Hempel Road. The gist of this is that it would send it back to planning and zoning to make those amendments,
Or not.
or with our recommendation.
You still deciding whether to second? Okay, motion dies from a lack of second. Anyone else?
Well, I can go ahead and, I'm sorry, I would do a second just to go, so that
Okay.
there's a vote.
All right, then we have a motion and a second. Now, do we have some discussion?
What was the motion?
Your motion?
You got a second.
On a second.
I was
All right.
looking, I was.
We had a delay of a second. We had a
I'm
delay
sorry,
of a
I was
second.
contemplating, and then I'm sorry, I apologize. I was,
So now
It's easy.
we
I
have
can confuse easy.
discussion.
so that there.
Either way, this would be going back to, on your motion, was going to have to go back to the planning commission anyways, because we're changing it.
That's my
So
understanding.
your motion could have,
It could have just been straight.
right, but, and then we could have made the recommendations to the planning commission.
Commissioners, if I could offer a thought procedurally, again, remind you of your 3 options: adopt as is, reject as is, and take no action, or reject by 4-1 vote and refer back to the Planning Commission with some direction as to what issues you want the Planning Commission to reexamine.
That.
In all likelihood, the Planning Commission will need to start the process of public notice and public hearing. And
Okay.
I doubt if that process would be completed before May.
Okay.
So the motion that was made is in effect item 3, which is rejected and send it back, which would require a 4-1.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So is there any further discussion on Commissioner Stevens' motion?
I was just going to ask a quick question. I was trying to do some math. What the County Road 1 corridor study was completed by? Who was the firm that was?
Vireo,
What was it?
Vireo with a V.
Uriel. Do you remember anybody? Remember what the sticker on that? What that
I
cost?
think it was around 100,000.
And there were meetings at the Tonganoxie Fairgrounds.
4-H building
Yeah.
or fairgrounds?
What was the amount?
DFW.
Around 100.
About 100,000.
Yeah.
What I was trying to do is we're talking about the comprehensive plan, which was roughly 300,000,
Yeah.
but consider 24 square miles, 80,000 residents from the very northern tip to the very southern tip. And so I don't think, while the comprehensive plans obviously had a lot of interest, engagement, and investment over time, both people and expense, this was a very focused study by a group that, and a significant expense was made on a far lesser area.
And there was a tremendous amount of participation and input.
But it's become dated.
I guess that's a matter of opinion.
Okay. So, is there any further discussion on Commissioner Stevens' motion? And
I think the focus, while this map obviously extends all the way through the middle of the city of Tonganoxie, those are that is the 4 areas of interest when you talk about connectivity and development.
And that's where
is the exact area that we're discussing about leaving off or sending it back for a Planning and Zoning Commission to potentially make it mirror or get closer to the comprehensive plan, of which I'm going to suggest the comprehensive plan only had a fraction of the amount of horsepower put into a particular area. Does that make sense? $300,000 across 24 square miles versus
Except
$100,000.
this motion does the motion does specifically exclude the light industrials excluded. So it is a recommendation.
It's for number 3. That's why I said when it comes right down to it.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion and voting?
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
You needed 4 to get it back to planning, right? Okay.
To reject the recommendation of the Planning Commission will require a 4-to-1 vote.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Make a motion.
Now, I'm confused again.
To approve what's presented it requires a simple majority.
To approve.
To reject what's presented or to send it back requires a 4-to-1 vote. Is that right?
That's a good summation.
Anybody want to make a motion?
If it's amended by this body, does that automatically send it back, or what's the effect of that?
Well, you really can't amend it. You can approve it, deny it, or send it back.
So the only amending part is to send it back?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to approve Resolution 2020-48. Is that right?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I will say that I feel like this is we respected request of commissioners on issues, and I think this is a request. I think the southern part of the county has concern that this be done right, and I think adopting a plan that even our staff admits that some of the categories were not something that probably would be created now, put it that way.
That's the RR40.
And some of the others, some of the PR ones up north. I think I just don't think it's respectful of the residents of the area.
Well, what I'm hearing, Mike, is also it's almost the same process to adjust this or amend it by next year's.
Your rezoning is different than your comprehensive plan change. It's much more difficult because you're setting up the whole process of rezoning allows for property owners to challenge it and those whole.
But we could adjust it next year with the same process.
You can.
With the same process.
But
either way, there's going to be a process. So we could rezone during the process of looking and doing the comprehensive plan and looking at how things match up, whether or not there needs to be a change, whether or not we want to move forward as there, or if we want to adjust, pull back, say, let's do this.
But why would we rezone it wrong to begin with? Just to make sure it happens?
I don't see it as wrong. I just see it as different.
Right.
Well, it doesn't fit with what we've already passed.
It doesn't fit.
So go deeper into that, though, outside of the RR40 specifically. You're talking about some of these mixed use versus light
I just think
industrial
the Planning
versus-
Commission, if they looked at this and they took this map here and they plugged this map into that area, are going to be looking at, like, across the road, they have the 2.5, maybe this ought to be 2.5 across the road.
And I'm saying
And the
those
same thing we
things-
got into 155th Street.
Yeah, and I'm
You
saying
got
those
one
things
side
could be
5 and one
addressed
side
next year.
2.5.
And obviously, the planning and zoning, no different than people that attend meetings, have an influence on those, but those were not built by planning and zoning. Those were built by paid consultants, both of them.
Exactly, but I just think we ought to try to, I just think it's a half-baked cake.
Okay.
Which could be
Good.
adjusted.
I don't like half-baked cakes.
We can fix it.
Okay.
I just think that if we take the time to do all of it at the same time instead of trying to do this, so if we do this now, that we still have the opportunity then, when we are doing the review, as the commission, to really look at very carefully. Because sending it back to planning and zoning commission does not, they could tell us, no.
6 months later.
We made our recommendation, this is where we want to stay.
Yeah, I feel
But
like
that's the only
was-
process we have, though, is, we can't adjust it
But
here.
what we can do is start and do a side-by-side at the time when we're reviewing the comprehensive plan, at the same time as we're reviewing, and we can have that map sitting there, all of it looking it together, looking at whether or not this applies to, am I making sense? And then
Yeah.
go ahead, and if we feel that it's necessary, ask for the planning and zoning at that point to take up the southern part of this, and let's pull this out. Which do we really want to do? And those are the things to sit and get that consideration to as we're looking at the comprehensive plan. And that's just, we only tabled all of this just to get it complete, just to get that completed, to have the table of uses, all of those things kind of in play and in place, and then bring this back. And it doesn't have to look exactly like the comprehensive plan because it's not the same area that we're looking at. This is a very narrow corridor of.
Okay. Any other discussion? So, voting?
No.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Thinking. Because, what's the other option?
Sending it back.
The majority will pass this.
This is your motion.
To adopt a resolution.
As presented.
It needs to be approved, it can be approved by a simple majority. If I could offer an observation, Commissioner KAAZ's statements are correct. Were you to adopt this resolution today, any property owner within that corridor could file an application for rezoning tomorrow.
Right.
Later today. And they would go through the process. Since you will be reviewing your comprehensive plan mid-year in 2021, during that period of time, you could examine this plan and begin to set in motion the mechanics to make such changes as you believed would be appropriate to recommend to the Planning Commission. But again, Commissioner Culbertson's observations are correct. Adopt or don't adopt this, no one will be required to do anything in that corridor. And we can't control the appraiser's office, but in theory at least, their taxes won't change. So again, the process, it's cumbersome, but it's designed to be slow so that people can see what's coming.
Aye.
That passed. Anything else?
No, sir.
All right. Anything else before this board? Anybody have anything to report on?
Millwood Bridge is open.
I have not made it up there, I'm sorry.
I participated in the meeting of the Kansas Beats the Virus for the doing plans for promoting the use of face coverings. A grant was applied for and received by the committee that was established for Leavenworth County. There will be decals and posters available. There's a plan for a poster contest for young people. There's also in place masks for businesses, that have come on, that weren't originally requiring facial coverings and things, will be made available to the local retail businesses throughout the county. I think that it starts off with 50, so a box for any business that would like to have those masks available. And then, as I said, in a decal that says, just to say I do, that I support the use of masks type thing, so it's a positive thing. Tonight, I will be participating in a Zoom meeting for the same group, the Kansas Beats the Virus. I'll be meeting with our medical director, Kathleen McBratney, along with members of the Live Well Leavenworth County Coalition, and we'll be working on plans to encourage the acceptance in the vaccine and for people to use the vaccine. And I don't know what the plan will be, but we'll be working on some kind of a plan to say, maybe a slogan, something that we can give or have out there that increases the public trust of the vaccine. And let's see, yesterday.
How much money are they going to spend on that?
Pardon?
How much money are they spending on that?
Is the Kansas Beats the Virus?
Yeah.
I do not know, because all I just was asked to participate, and so I'm participating. The grant that the group received for was, I think, $2,500 for the promotional things from within the county for that. I doubt that there will be any really substantial amount spent on the encouraging people for the vaccine. It's going to be more public information using like Channel 2, newspaper, the availability, and letting people know where they can receive the vaccines information and things like that. I'll find out more tonight, because that's the first meeting.
Well, I was going to ask John, Little Times, he's not here. Didn't they just report that it was in Leavenworth County or coming to Leavenworth County?
Well, we do have the vaccine, I think, is arriving in Leavenworth County, but I think that may be part of what's, I don't know, because that's what the meeting is tonight.
Oh,
So let's
You'll have
I'll
more
find
to
that out.
report next week. Then.
And I participated in the last evening. There was a Zoom celebration for Connection to Success for the youth version. And so I gave out information in the breakout sessions for both the county employment opportunities for people graduating from high school or choosing a track going to college that might enter them into a profession working for county government. And then I did a flip side on the construction industry, which kind of they can parallel. Mm-hmm. But in a breakout session, great group of young people. They're all high school students that participated. They committed to 12 days of pretty long afternoons after school into the evening of learning interviewing techniques, increasing their self-esteem and self-confidence in getting out there and looking for work. And so it was a really neat group of young people that participated. So I was happy to have done that.
Okay. Thank you.
We had a special meeting Monday night with the City of Easton to get their COVID relief funds finalized. Did they get those turned in, Mark? On the City of Easton get what they needed turned in on time? I hope.
I did yesterday afternoon. I did receive an email from the city that had a spreadsheet and some supporting documentation, and then I think this morning we had the other forms submitted, so I think they got everything.
Okay. So we got that in. Did Linwood get theirs turned in?
I think there's been in for quite some time.
Yeah, I think that Linwood stuff is
wait
turned
till
in.
last minute.
Not like you people in the north.
I think there might have still been some work going on down in Linwood, that there were some invoices we were waiting on, but I think we got that too. So.
1:45 a.m.
Yeah. I will say I talked to Mr. Hine, and I haven't talked to Commissioner Culbertson. Yep, and we're going to have a meeting about County Road 30 to receive a petition on that issue. And
And the petition is
In January.
to put it on the ballot.
To get improvements made.
Well, and
How
I
to-
know, but we've all
How to
agreed
do that.
that.
I think that's what the meeting is.
We're going to visit about it.
Explain to him what,
Okay, because that's
What is-
what, we've all agreed about County Road 30. We're
Yeah.
just waiting on some KDOT funding.
I think that's what we need the meeting for, is to explain to him what, if any,
And
options there
we are
are.
starting, we're designing part of it right now.
South end.
And then the next move would be the property acquisition, utility relocation.
They just want a meeting at the fire
Right,
station to
right.
talk
I mean,
about it.
All this board here is very supportive of the project.
Yep.
Right.
And I think they know that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all talked about the north-south connection on the
They
west
just-
side of the county.
We just wish we had an unlimited supply of funds.
Well, as long as KDOT keeps doing what they're doing, we'll have the money.
Yeah.
Back on the vaccines, so I've had a lot of questions about that, and somebody said Douglas County was starting a list of who to get the vaccines first. So do we know any more for Leavenworth County as far as what the process is going to be for vaccination?
That'll probably be talked about tonight, but I think that the state of Kansas has kind of established
Who gets the
a set of
vaccine
priorities.
first, and it was.
And I know that
That's exciting.
medical professionals, like the frontline medical, and then I believe that coming in ahead of some members of the public, just in the scheme of things, and I don't know, that may be adjusted because I have listened in on some of those, is people in the corrections, both inmates and corrections officers, because they're at higher risk of exposure and/or transmission, and so they're kind of up there in the.
We do have that case study here.
Yeah.
Well, it's just I know that they're probably going to come in ahead of the healthy people over 65.
Wow,
Which makes sense.
Sure glad
Right.
an inmate's going to get that for it.
Yeah, I just, and
I
then
was
they'll go
worried
with the
about
people
that.
with pre-existing health conditions and nursing homes.
You'll know more after
Nursing homes.
tonight.
Prisons.
You'll know more after tonight.
I should.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll give you a call when I.
So if you want to get the vaccine soon, get incarcerated.
No, they were just asking about.
Okay.
They heard Douglas County was already giving them out. That's
Hey, I'm not
I think
afraid to
that's
be a
true.
guinea pig. I mean, it's like, to me, it's like.
I had one
Yeah.
quick request. It wasn't an update since I couldn't be here last week, but in talking with the city administrator in Leavenworth, I'm trying to get on their docket. I don't think they're going to reconvene until after the first of the year, so their first meeting in January. With hopefully, I'm requesting maybe a letter of support that could be created and come in front of the board next week to have a third-party audit or review of our dispatch services. And so my request isn't because I don't think, obviously the county's doing a great job. I think they are. Or that the city of Leavenworth isn't doing a great job. I think they are. I think we've got a very unique instance of redundancy that has created issues over time. And I've been following it and trying to ask questions and learn more. And I think a third-party audit would give us what we need. But ultimately, because of the complexity of how phone calls come in, and generally it's coming from a cell phone and where you may be, and kind of even just the list of questions that get asked, you may actually go through an entire investigation with one dispatch to realize you're at the wrong dispatch, then to get sent to another dispatch. And so this can take precious seconds and or minutes in an emergency, and I don't care if it's a house fire, I don't care if it's a heart attack, I don't care if it's a stroke. Anything that creates delays in response times of first responders, I'm adamantly against, whatever the reasoning may be. So while I'm happy to make that recommendation of just the county, I think it's a combined effort that needs to be done, and I'm hoping that if anybody agrees that a third-party review to maybe assess the combined systems and give us some feedback, good, bad, or otherwise, is a worthwhile exercise. And I think it's been recommended to me that if I had board support, it may be met with more support with the city than if it's just chat, which doesn't hurt my feelings at all. So I thought I'd at least ask.
Okay.
If anybody, if I can maybe ask Mr. Van Paris to help craft what that letter could look like and maybe bring it in front of the board next week so we could formally vote on whether or not it's a good idea. I assure you my motivation is purely response times to save lives for what that's worth.
I can do so, Commissioner. I'll make certain, too, that your name is not mentioned in that letter at any point.
Feel free to put me at the top. I'm okay with
Okay.
being disliked. It's not a problem.
maybe you know, or you can tell me, because I don't know, what's the history of the two being separate?
We're going to need a whole another meeting.
Is that-
And it
is that
probably
like
goes back many
Commissioner, I
people
will
and
say,
decades.
you really
of
are
time.
Remember
just
that
give
thing in
some
school that
numbers.
said does not work and play well with others?
Well, maybe.
Remember that
I will
little-
just make this statement. Dispatchers are not telephone operators. That is a very important,
very complicated.
complex job. And if Commissioner Shimke believes it is worthy of study, it's probably one of the most vital parts of our emergency response system. Without communications, you just drive around looking for whatever.
That's right.
It'd be interesting to know where all the leadership on the two law enforcement.
I think some of it's systems that they use there in conflict as well.
No doubt. I mean,
it's more complex.
It's
than,
not a people thing. It's not a technology
Right.
thing. It's not a county versus city thing. We are a little bit unique in that we have this kind of redundancy with this type of proximity. At the end of the day, I'd like a third party to come in and tell us what they would do, because they don't have a dog in the fight and they don't care about feelings or history or budgets or people or anything else. And I think that's a worthwhile effort.
Okay.
For what it's worth.
I would include Fort Leavenworth too, because
Absolutely.
they're separate.
Absolutely.
There's actually 3 different
and
totally
they're all
agree.
on different systems. That's the thing I think that complicates the whole.
Right. When everybody buys $1 million system, that sucks.
I really doubt, though, if the fort could be included in a
I don't know.
study.
That's what I'm wondering, because they're a completely different
Yeah, I
dispatch
don't know.
system
But
too.
it's.
Well, I mean,
it's-
all we can
just
do is
get the
ask.
Just get the dialogue going.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
So that was,
Okay.
since I didn't have an update, I thought
All
I'd
right.
put that request out for next week to try to make that.
That'll work. All right. And the only thing I've done was Zoom meeting Mid-America Regional Council yesterday. Based on their $7.4 million.
I think LCDC's Thursday, tomorrow.
Yep. Who's going?
I was. Is that noon?
I think
I
it's
got an
gonna-
11 o'clock conference call I got to be on.
I think it's a Zoom meeting, isn't it? LCDC.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's Zoom. I was just checking.
At noon, 11:30.
Then when's the
I'll
fourth?
find-
I was planning to,
authority?
so.
Okay.
I'll find out.
Okay. Sounds like got it covered. A motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Voting aye.
Aye.
We're done.